Ruka ducked an arrow and lifted his sword. He stared for a frozen moment at the look of triumph on a young Naranian's face as it crested above the wall. Ruka supposed he understood. To have survived the long march and the climb when so many others had fallen, it must have seemed a miracle. It made no difference. Bukiag cleaved the boy's head above the jaw. Their razor-sharp steel splashed blood and brains from the wall like a mason's scrap. The boy's body fell, and for a blissful moment, another did not take its place. Ruka leaned and breathed against the cold stone. "They are pressed hard in the east, shaman!" Berman yelled over the din. "Go!" Ruka grunted. "Take Canute's retainers!" The old chief and 5 men of Ash pushed towards the heavier fighting, their faces pale and sweating. Ruka had thinned his men in the centre as much as he dared. Maybe 1 Askomi for every 3 ladders below, each chopping as if hoarding firewood before the frost. He should have spread them sooner, he knew. He thought the day's attack would already be over. Blood and body parts slopped over the walls, coating all like sediment-filled paint thrown from pails. An ever-growing mound of corpses formed at the base of the wall, impossible to remove even by the efficient Naranians. Ruka had stopped counting, but his own losses were light. For that reason, he should have been pleased. The day had been a one-sided massacre, many hours of pure butchery for the enemy soldiers. But the fog was gone. In the warm orange glow of a fading sun, Ruka saw an endless mass of troops coming forward. He began to understand, with a quiet fear, this emperor was not testing the defences. He had broken from the Analects. This was the main assault, the only assault. And it would not stop until the will of the city shattered, or the whole of the emperor's army perished. Ruka blinked to clear sweat from his vision, picturing in hurried images all the faces of the men he had killed. The climbers were terrified, their ascent perilous, begun over the bodies of their comrades, every failed wave before left in ragged tatters. Yet still they advanced. They climbed their brethren's corpses to be hacked at the wall, or if very lucky, to perhaps wound an enemy before being cut or thrown down. It was beyond bravery. In his enemies' faces, Ruka did not see heroes, but madmen, expressions wild and inhuman, slaves driven with the whip, bound by the mind. "Fresh wave, shaman!" one of the Tong commanders called. Ruka blinked and banished the dead. More arrows flew past him, one striking the male on his shoulder, then bounced away. He looked at his feet, confused, for the missile was too thick and angled. Bukiag, of course, understood the horror first. Droplets of blood fell from the sky, and the defenders cried out in terror as they swatted as if at a swarm of flies. The Naranians were using their machines to throw the body parts of their own dead. Bukiag was growling, or maybe laughing. He swung their sword to meet fresh men and boys climbing to his reach, and Ruka did not interfere. They had a deal. At the wall they were his, and Ruka was so very tired. Darkness loomed, and he had no reinforcements. He watched the violence as if imprisoned, as if Bukiag were the master and he only an observer. His brother killed and roared, his limbs moving as if every death only made him stronger. Time passed and deaths mounted, until attacker and defender fought by torch and moonlight alone. For the day-blind men of Vol and Galdra, Rue and the Enlightened, the world became only grunts and screams, shapes emerging and vanishing in the night. But Ruka was something else. He leaned over the rampart and looked at the men below, many staring at the glow of his golden eyes, shining in the dark. Bukiag saw their terror and laughed, calling out in his broken Naranian. "Now you see what monster awaits you! Come and die!"